Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome back to my channel, my lovelies. If you've never been here before, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I am so happy you found me. I do so hope that you will like and subscribe before you leave. Become part of the mama family. Mama's got your back, at least where makeup's concerned, and definitely when that makeup is cheap. Today is True Love Tuesday. Today's story is so sad. We're talking about Michelle Williams and Heath Ledger. Such a fantastic, fantastic actor that was taken way, way too soon. Before we get started, a very special, very warm welcome to any of those that are new to my channel. I am so incredibly happy that you are here. If you enjoy the content, I do so hope that you will mash that thumbs up button. I hope that you'll subscribe in case you haven't already. And I hope that you will ring my bell, turn on your notifications, so that way, next time I upload a video, you can come right back here and we can hang out together again. Also, my eye makeup is already done. It's so pretty. It is so pretty. I'm so in love with it. It turned out exactly the way that I wanted it to. I did, of course, film a TikTok on today's eye look, just in case you're curious. I will make sure to have the tag for that, as well as all of my other socials, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff, in the description box below. Guys, if you are not following me on all my other socials, you definitely should go do that. I post fun content every single day, and if you're following me everywhere, you don't have to worry about missing a single moment of it. Also, guys, I will have a full list of everything that I use in today's video in the description box as well. I usually don't talk too awful much about the makeup that I'm using during True Love Tuesdays, but of course, if you have any questions about anything I'm using, all you gotta do is leave a comment and I will get back to you. Also, if you see me looking over in this direction, it is because I am looking at my notes. I did try to be as thorough as possible for today's video, so we're going to be here for just a minute. We usually are for True Love Tuesday. So I hope that you will sit back, get comfy, get cozy, and let's go ahead and get to it. Heath and Michelle. It seems like only yesterday that Heath was like that super moody kind of bad boy with a heart of gold on in 10 Things I Hate About You. You remember that movie with Julia Stiles? I remember absolutely loving that movie so much. I must have watched it about 1,000,001 times when I was a kid. I think it also had a baby, Jonathan Gordon-Levitt's. There were a ton of people in that movie that I had teeny tiny little crushes on, and I remember thinking that Julia Stiles was so beautiful, and like I loved how strong and kind of sassy she was in that movie. But of course, most of all, I remember Heath Ledger, and I remember how gorgeous he was, and just, oh, that smile. Everything about that man was just 10 out of 10. And then he was in A Knight's Tale, and he was just like super cute, and then he was Casanova, and that was really fantastic as well. I just think he was so dreamy. He had such a verve and such a kind of like sassiness to him as well that was kind of intoxicating. And then he started to do roles that were so much juicier. One of the last things that he ever did was play the Joker in The Dark Knight. And his performance in that movie was, it gave me goosebumps. It gave me chills. Like, he was so good at being bad. It was kind of insane. And then to find out that he had just kind of like passed, it was such a shock. And I remember he had just recently broken up with Michelle at that point. And I remember her being devastated, and then he left behind his little girl, and there was just a lot going on there. And I just remember being like, wow, it just kind of brought into perspective that everything is so fragile, and it can be ripped away at any moment. Now, as always, we're going to start talking about each half of the whole first, and then we will get into them together as a couple. We're going to start off with Mr. Heath. He was born Heath Andrew Ledger on April 4th, 1979. He was born and raised in Perth, Australia. His mother, Sally Ramshaw, was a French teacher, while his father was a race car driver / engineer. Now, Daddy had money. Daddy came from money. Actually, Heath's great-grandfather, Sir Frank Ledger, was a pretty well-known engineer and really built an empire and left it to his descendants. So much so that in 1980, the Ledger family estate was reported to be worth upwards of $2 million. So, needless to say, Mr. Heath had a very, very comfortable upbringing. Now, Heath's father, Kim, not the best with money. Definitely not the best when it comes to making financial decisions in any capacity. And when he was appointed as executor of the trust, he actually ended up almost bankrupting it and had to be removed from that position. Now, that little tidbit of information is going to be important just a little bit later down the road, but I just thought it was kind of like, who knew? I had no idea that Heath came from that kind of money, but indeed he did. Now, Heath's upbringing, his young life, it was fantastic, right? He never had to worry about money. He always had toys. There were no problems until his parents just could not cohabitate anymore. Their relationship was not the best, even at the best of times, and they eventually ended up getting a divorce. He was around 10 years old when they separated, and then they were officially divorced when he was around 11. Now, the divorce actually had a pretty big impact on Heath, and this is actually the catalyst. This is what made him really dive into acting, and it helped him kind of discover the love of his life, right? So during his parents' divorce, he just needed something to occupy himself, something to kind of escape in. And his sister, Kate, who he is incredibly close with, is actually the one who kind of encouraged him to try out for the school play. So he does. He trusts his sister's opinion, so he goes out for his school production of Peter Pan. And of course, he does spectacularly. And from that first play, absolutely fell in love with being on the stage. He fell in love with the attention that came along with it. And just really excelled when it came to acting and things of that nature. Fun fact, both Heath and his sister Kate were actually named after the main characters of one of my favorite books, Wuthering Heights. And it happens to be Heath's mom's favorite book as well. So I thought that was a super cute little tidbit. If you've never read that book, you definitely should, especially if you enjoy reading. It is an American classic, definitely for a reason. I keep trying to get my son to read it, but he's just not into it. So after both of his parents divorced, they went on to each remarry, and then they both each had another daughter as well. So on top of his full sister Kate, he has two other sisters, one named Ashley Bell, who is on his mom's side, and then another one named Olivia Ledger, who is on his father's side. Now, he is pretty close to all of his sisters, though I'd say that his closest relationship was to Kate, which is who he spent most of his life with. Now, Heath was not a very big fan of school at all. So when he found out that he could take an equivalency test and just kind of be done with it, that's exactly what he did. At the age of 16, he takes the test. He passes it with flying colors because he's actually really, really intelligent. And he's like, I'm done. And as soon as he gets that piece of paper that says he is done with school, he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. He packs his bags and he's off to chase his dreams. Now, luckily, he doesn't have to go on his own. He actually goes with his best friend. Now, this boy named Trevor DiCarlo, him and Heath had been friends since they were 3 years old, had gone all the way through school together, and they were like, road trip, it's time. So they pack their bags into Heath's car, and they drive all the way clear across the continent. They go from Perth all the way to Sydney, and actually all the way back. They go in search of roles, in search of, trying to follow their dreams. They both want to be actors. But by the time they get to Sydney, Heath gets an offer. He ends up getting cast in a role and ends up having to go all the way back home to Perth to actually pursue it. So it was fun while it lasted, I guess. Now, after that, Heath was cast in a few pretty small parts, but eventually, as we all know, he blew up pretty quickly. He ended up getting his big break in 1999, I believe, in 10 Things I Hate About You. And then after that, it just kind of was like a snowball effect. He was in a ton of stuff after that point. He was in some of his biggest roles, Brokeback Mountain, which is, I think, probably his most cinematic role, like definitely something that he was proud of. He was in A Knight's Tale, Casanova. We all kind of know his body of work. Really was a very, very talented actor, though. Now, when it comes to Heath, I think one of the bigger aspects of his personality is that this man was a playboy. He was a playboy. He was a party-hardy kind of guy and enjoyed living it up. And when it comes to his dating history, y'all, this man definitely had a type. Heath was certainly not shy when it came to the ladies. He knew that he was attractive. He knew that he was, he was kind of a catch, and he played that up very, very much. From the time that he got to Hollywood to the time that he met Michelle, you would be amazed at how many relationships or kind of like hookups he actually had. Because it's actually a pretty short amount of time between when he arrived and when he met Michelle. Heath's first kind of like recorded romance was actually with a younger woman. And this was before his preferences kind of started making an appearance. He worked on a show named Roar with a woman named Lisa Zane. She is absolutely stunning, but she's a little bit older. She's got dark hair, and she's definitely not the sort of type that he would go for a little bit later on. But she must have taught him a thing or two, because they were together for a moment, and it's said that their kind of brief hookup was very, very passionate. It was very fiery, but neither one of them really spoke about it very much. And then as soon as they weren't working together on the show anymore, the relationship kind of dissolved. At the time, though, Heath was only 18 years old, so she definitely was his first, like, experienced kind of paramour, his first experienced partner. And it seems like he must have gotten a taste of something that he liked, because after that, I don't think he went very long without female companionship at all. While Heath was filming 10 Things I Hate About You in 1999, he and co-star Julia Stiles obviously had a little bit of a fling. I feel like that one's kind of self-explanatory. I feel like we all kind of like just went ahead and assumed that. They had really, really great chemistry in that movie. And of course, why not? They were both very, very young. They were both, didn't have any responsibilities. Neither one of them was in a relationship. So while we're here, might as well, right? So again, that wasn't really anything more than just a brief fling. And again, as soon as filming was over, so was the relationship. Heath very briefly dated Australian model Christina Cauchi in 2000, but it didn't last long either. They went on a few dates, but the relationship never really panned out. There must not have been a connection there, because they were never seen out, and the relationship never kind of got past the dating phase. And then Heath had a short but extremely passionate affair with Heather Graham. Now, again, this is his preference, because we all know Heather Graham is an absolute freaking bombshell, right? She's absolutely stunning. But again, Heath is, he is going after someone who's just a little bit older than him, who's maybe just a little bit more experienced, and like they had a blast together. Again, it was never meant to be anything super long lasting. It was never meant to be anything serious, but Heath really enjoyed himself with Heather, and Heather has also said that she had a great time with Heath as well. They met on the set of From Hell, which is kind of an obscure film. I've never heard of it, but they actually dated for a few months. They dated from late 2000 into the early 2001s. Next up, we have Heath's first real relationship, and this was with the one and the only Miss Naomi Watts, and they actually dated for 2 years. They met on the set of Ned Kelly, which was an Australian, I think it was a film, but they met on the set of Ned Kelly. They're both Australians. They had quite a bit in common, and they actually dated from 2002 until 2004. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't find a ton of literature on like the how and whys of the relationship. All I know is that they were together and then they weren't. Now, in early 2002, before he began his relationship with Naomi, it was rumored that he was having a little bit of an affair with Kate Hudson. Now, I couldn't confirm this, and of course, neither one of them ever spoke about it, but it was kind of rumored that they had a little bit of a thing when they worked together on the movie The Four Feathers. That's another one that I've never seen before, but if you've seen it, let me know. Should I go check it out? Like, is it a good one? I've never heard of, like, quite a few of these movies before, so I feel like I need to go watch some of them. Now, very shortly after he breaks up with Naomi, this is when he meets Michelle, and kind of like he is with Michelle for pretty much the rest of his life. Now, right after him and Michelle broke up, he began dating Australian supermodel Gemma Ward, but he was only with her for about 2 months before he very sadly passed. So I don't know if we want to count that or not, but they were in the beginning of starting a relationship together. And then we have Miss Michelle, and her backstory is actually just as surprising as Heath's was. I had assumed that both of them had had pretty normal childhoods, but y'all, I couldn't have been any more wrong. Figured out that Heath was kind of like a millionaire playboy, and then freaking Michelle is so much more than meets the eye. Michelle was born Michelle Ingrid Williams on September 9th, 1980. She's a little bit less than, like, almost half a year younger than Mr. Heath. She was born in Kalispell, Missouri, which, again, I've never heard of. I've never been to Missouri. But if I have anybody watching from Missouri, hi, how are ya? How is it there? I'd love to know. Her mother, Carla, was a homemaker and a stay-at-home wife, while her father, Larry R. Williams, was an author, a commodities trader. He was actually he was like a big deal when it came to the trading community. Very, very good at what he did. They had a very comfortable lifestyle as well. Her father was also a wannabe politician. He had run unsuccessfully twice for the Senate as the Republican nominee, and unfortunately, again, he was unsuccessful and didn't get it either time. She has 3 older paternal half-siblings and then a younger sister named Paige. Now, her mother was her father's second wife, I believe, and before he married Michelle's mother, he had 3 children with his previous wife. And then after he married Michelle's mother, he had Michelle and then also her sister named Paige. Now, young Michelle was very much a daddy's girl. She loved spending time with her dad. She loved being outdoors, doing any and everything she could just to kind of be near to him. And while he was a very busy man, didn't always have a ton of time to spend with her, he did take the time to teach her how to shoot and teach her how to fish. Like I said, they spent a lot of time outdoors together. Unfortunately, that all changed when she was 9 and they packed up and they moved from Missouri to San Diego, California. And this had a profound effect not only on Michelle as a person, also her relationship with her parents. Now, after the move, she kind of shut down a little bit. She went from being very kind of like daddy's girl, always wanting to be kind of up daddy's hiney just a little bit, to being very quiet, to being very self-reliant. Like, she kind of grew up quite a bit in that period. Now, again, I'm not exactly sure why, but she has made a point to mention that a lot changed as soon as they moved to San Diego. Also, at this point in time is when she kind of found her love of acting. Now, she had always been kind of intrigued by it, and she had kind of dabbled in plays and school productions. But once they moved to San Diego is when she started auditioning for, like, real roles. She would have her parents drive her out to Los Angeles on the weekends, and she would go do a bunch of auditions at one time. Her first role was in 1993 on an episode of Baywatch, and then later on she was on episodes of Step by Step and Home Improvement. Nothing big. She didn't get her big break until a little while later, but she did have smaller supporting roles throughout her entire childhood. She also was in the movie Species. If you've ever seen that movie, it's really kind of an awful movie. It's kind of an awful movie, but for some reason, it's one of my very, very favorites. I actually really, really love that movie. Don't ask me why, because I know it's genuinely terrible. But Michelle actually ends up playing the younger version of the main character in that movie. And I didn't even really put two and two together until I heard that while I was doing this research. And I was like, oh my goodness, that really is her. Kind of like a light bulb moment for me. Now, after all of these smaller roles, she ended up getting a part in the movie Lassie, and she got a pretty big part in that movie actually, and this is what kind of jump-started her career. Now, it did take a couple more years after that for her to really get something that was like juicy enough for her to really like support herself with. And during those couple of years, life actually got pretty difficult for her. When Michelle turned 15 years old, she actually emancipated herself from her parents. Now, she did so with the permission of said parents, but the reason she did so was so that she could kind of circumvent the child labor laws. She really wanted to be able to go out and get bigger roles, juicier parts, and she couldn't do that when she had to kind of abide by, again, child labor laws. So she ends up emancipating herself. She has the courts to declare her a legal adult, and then y'all, she's 15 at this point in time. And then not only does she like emancipate herself, but she moves out of her parents' house. She moves out of her parents' house, moves to LA all on her own at 15 years old. She gets her own apartment, and she basically begins to take care of herself at 15 years old. Y'all, my child is 14, and to think about him moving out on his own and taking care of himself, like he would be dead in 2 days. Like I just don't know how she did it. At 15, that's kind of incredible. And I think that goes to show just how strong-willed she is and how truly determined she was to be an actress. She struggled. She struggled in a very, very big way. It was very difficult for her to find roles and to get like steady work. And so funds were tight. She wasn't taking any money from her parents. She was very determined to kind of like take care of herself and to be very self-reliant. So even though she wasn't really enthused with the parts that she was getting, she was taking whatever was offered to her because, again, she didn't really have a choice. That is until she turned 17. Now, when she turned 17, she was able to enter a competition that really set her up for the next couple years of her life. She entered the Robbinsville World Championship, which is a trading contest. And actually, again, her father, hotshot commodities trainer, really good at his job, and of course had passed that knowledge on to his daughter. The prize of this contest was a 1,000% return on any profits made on trades during the competition, right? So she is motivated. She is motivated. She knows that she can make some serious money if she does well during this competition. So she does. She actually goes on to win the competition. She becomes the youngest and only female to ever win the entire competition. She actually ends up placing third in highest winnings ever earned. And the person who is in spot number one, just take a guess. Well, that would be dear old dad. So after she wins the contest, she now has just a little bit of breathing room, and she can be just a little bit more selective on what roles she's taking, and this is where she begins to really cultivate her artistic taste. Now, Michelle's big break came in 1998 when she was cast in the teen drama Dawson's Creek. Did y'all actually watch Dawson's Creek? I think it was just a little bit before my time. I was not old enough to really be into TV, and definitely wasn't 18, not yet anyway. And so I never really got into it, and I've never really watched reruns of it or anything like that. So I really don't know her from that show at all. But apparently she did really, really well on the show. And it was pretty much a catalyst for her career. After that casting is when doors really opened up for her. And she really had many more choices, right? Now, she's spoken about her time on Dawson's Creek, and while she really enjoyed everybody that she worked with, and she got a lot of really great reviews for her acting roles and things like that on the show, like everybody really liked her in that role, she said that it wasn't her favorite. It definitely wasn't something that she would have chosen to do for herself. Now, for this role on Dawson's Creek, she actually ended up having to relocate. So she had to relocate from Los Angeles all the way to Wilmington, North Carolina. Now, she worked on that series for about 6 years. She worked on it from January of 1998 to May of 2003. And this is where she, like I said, she was starting to really develop her artistic taste, and she was trying to find herself as an actor. So during this time of filming, she would be in Wilmington for 9 months out of the year while she was filming the show. And then the rest of the year, that's when she would take more artistic projects. That's when she would take on more artistic projects. She would really go through, and she really loves independent films. Even today, she definitely she stars more in smaller, more lesser known independent films. That's just what makes her happy. And this is, at that point in time, this is when she's really figuring out what she really, really likes. So for the other months of the year that she's not filming Dawson's Creek, she's out living her best artistic life. Of course, she can't really walk away from those more mainstream roles, though, because that's what's paying her bills. Independent movies sadly don't pay as well as mainstream ones do. She is most prominently known for starring in small-scale independent films with darker or tragic themes. Like, she's kind of like, I don't know. When I think of her, I think of like Waif, and I think almost like Ghostly. She's in a ton of horror films. Like, she just has that kind of vibe. And that's what she enjoys doing. So those are the roles that she really goes for most often. But she has certainly made a name for herself. She's been in about 57 different films. And of course, she still continues to act in things. I think most recently, the thing that I really recognize her from was a mini-series that she did about Fosse Verdon. It was really, really good. If you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. It's been a minute since I've watched it, so I couldn't even tell you really what the main plot line is. But I remember watching a couple episodes of it and really liking it. I liked her role in that. I'm not even going to lie. I really watched it because of Sam Rockwell. I'm a stan for Sam Rockwell. But she was good in that one too. In her career, she has won 2 Golden Globe Awards, and she's won a Primetime Emmy, and I'm sure that there will be more in her future. Now, when it comes to Michelle's dating life, y'all, her dating life, like her list of exes, is just as eclectic as her body of work. Like, you know, where Heath was concerned, he definitely had a type. Miss Michelle is certainly not that way. Her tastes have definitely run the gambit. Michelle's first, Hollywood romance was with fellow actor Bobby Cannavale. Cannavale? I think that's how you say it. They dated from December of 2003, and they dated for a little bit over 3 months till March of 2004. And again, Michelle, I don't think really knew what she was looking for, and she didn't know what she was looking for until she found it. Now, after Bobby, this is when she met Heath, and she was with Heath for a while. She was with Heath for, I think, around 3 or 4 years, and then all that tragedy happened, and it took her a minute to move on. So after Heath, she was in a string of short 1-year kind of romances. Again, I think first of all, she was just trying to find happiness again. She was just trying to find what she wanted. She just didn't know, I don't think. So after Heath, her first romance after him was she went for funny guys. She went for feel-good guys, guys that were going to bring back a little bit of joy to her life, right? So she meets Spike Jonze. She meets Spike Jonze while he is directing one of the movies that she's in, and they strike up a little bit of a romance, and they date for, I think, around a year, from July of 2008 till September of 2009. And then after that is when she gets with Jason Segel? Anyway, she meets Jason, and this is the relationship that I most remember, because I remember thinking that they looked so sweet together. Now, at this point, you have to remember that Michelle she's a single mother, right? She has her daughter Matilda, and she is fiercely protective of her daughter, and she's not going to introduce anyone or really bring anyone around her daughter that she isn't sure of. And I remember when she was dating Jason, there were pictures of them kind of hanging out together, and Jason was hanging out with Matilda, and they were walking around in New York. and Jason had Matilda on his shoulders, and they just looked so sweet and so cute. But then when I found out, or when I heard that they had broken up, I remember feeling so sad, because I feel like it could have been really good for her. Now again, Michelle is a very, very private person, so I'm not exactly sure why these relationships didn't really work out. All I really know is that I just don't think she knew what she was looking for. And again, had no idea until she actually found it. So she dated Jason from February of 2012 to February of 2013. So dang near a full year. And then after that, they just kind of like went their own separate ways. After that, she had another 2 months after she broke up with Jason, she has another year-long affair with contemporary artist Dustin Yellin. And they're together from April of 2013 till May of 2014. And it seems like she can't really break this 1-year curse. Seems like every relationship she's in, she can't get past that 1 year mark. And I don't exactly know what that is, like what's going on there. But she has like 5 or 6 of these 1 year long romances. So after she breaks up with Dustin Yellin, she then starts a romance with Jonathan Safran Foer. And he is an author. Y'all, like I said, she goes from actors to artists to authors to musicians. Like, there is no type, right? And all of these guys, they look completely different. Again, I just think that she is searching. So Jonathan and her stay together for a little while. They're from July of 2015 till mid 2016. But again, he wasn't really the right fit, not exactly what she was looking for. So she's on to the next guy. Now, the next relationship that Michelle enters into actually becomes her first marriage. And I think the reason that she kind of leapt into the whole marriage thing with this guy is because they bonded over some serious shared trauma. But I have it on pretty good authority that their matchmaker was actually Michelle's best friend, Busy Phillips. And I guess she thought that because they had similar backstories, they might kind of hit it off. And she was very correct. So they met, they dated for only a couple of months, and then they got married in secret, high up in the mountains somewhere. And they were basically just gonna kind of go for it, right? Now, their shared trauma is the fact that both of their previous partners had passed on. Now, by this point, Heath has been gone for around 10 years, and then Phil had previously lost his ex-wife, and he lost her about 16 months after she had given birth to their daughter, and unfortunately, she passed away of cancer. So again, they have that shared trauma from their past that I think was very much a connection for the two of them. Now, sadly, this marriage didn't last. They only stayed together for, again, about a year before they eventually divorced. But I think she gave it a shot, and it just didn't work out for her. And I think at this point, this is when she starts to get just a little bit discouraged, because she's been in a bunch of different relationships by this point, and just nothing's really working out. And I think she's starting to feel like she's never going to find exactly what it is that she's looking for. Luckily for her, the very next relationship that she would be in would be her very, very last, and the one that she's still in to this date. So after this is when she actually got cast in that show that I was talking about not too long ago, the Fosse Verdon show. And this is where she met her now husband, a man by the name of Thomas Cale. Now, they met while working together, and at that point, they were both married to separate people. She was still married to Phil, and then Thomas was married to his ex-wife. And, they had a connection, but it wasn't really much more than like a friendship kind of thing. However, after they had kind of stopped working together and gone off and done their own things, life happens. They eventually ended up getting divorces and somehow found their way back to each other. And this is when the romance finally started to bloom. And actually, she is incredibly happy now. She actually went on to marry Thomas. They now have 2 children together. So I'm really happy that she was eventually able to find her happiness. But it seems like after Heath, it just was really, really difficult for her to kind of rebound from that. And that brings us in to the juicy part, the meat of today's video, Michelle and Heath's love story. Heath and Michelle dated for around 3 years. before they broke up in 2007. So they were engaged throughout their relationship. However, they never did walk down the aisle together. And then they broke up in 2007, just 5 months before Heath accidentally overdosed and passed away. So they met in 2004 on the set of Brokeback Mountain. Everybody knows that movie is kind of epic. You know, to this day, I still have never watched it. I do not know why. I've never had time to actually just sit down and watch it though. I definitely need to. So their co-stars in that movie were Anne Hathaway and Jake Gyllenhaal, and they said it was like love at first sight. From the very moment that they kind of laid eyes on each other, it was kind of a done deal. Heath would kind of sit there all day on set, just kind of giving googly eyes to Michelle, and she would follow him around like a lost little puppy. So they flirted and they did that little dance. Nothing ever really came of it until one day on set they're filming and somehow Michelle ends up twisting her knee. She's just like, she's in pain. She's hurt. She's in pain. And she just kind of like crumples and falls into a little pile and starts sobbing. Now, again, Michelle is a pretty self-sufficient kind of person. She really kind of takes care of herself. So for her to kind of fall down sobbing in pain, she was seriously hurting. And of all people on set, Heath was the very first one to come to her rescue. He was the first one to notice that she was like not okay. And he walks up to her and he instantly sees that she is not okay. She is hurt. And he starts ordering people around, telling them to call, we got to get her to the hospital, this, that, and the other thing. And the whole time she's kind of looking up at him like lost, right? Because he's just taken charge. He's ordering people around, trying like getting her taken care of. And it's just like, kind of like a hero moment, And then the car comes and they're loading her up, getting ready to take her to the hospital. And of course, producers are like, all right, well, she's going to the hospital. Let's go ahead and get back to work. And Heath is like, oh no, you think she's going to the hospital alone? Not happening. So he gets into the car right beside her. The entire time he is stroking her hair and comforting her and basically doting on her. And at that point is when she was done for. She was 100% in love with that man at that point. I think it really kind of took her off guard how willing he was to show how much he cared. It seems like, and we all know, Heath was a party boy. He was kind of like this nonchalant, moody, bad boy, but then for him to be so attentive and so caring when she was in need, it was like, it's like every girl's like absolute fantasy, right? You want this guy who's like tough on the exterior, but like absolutely melts on the inside, but just for you. Like she had that storybook romance that we all dream about, and it like was playing out in real life for her. On top of the fact that he's incredibly handsome, he's got that Australian accent. He's just like, he is everything her little heart desires. Now, also at this point in time, they are very, very young. At this point, Michelle is about 23 and Heath is about 25. So, practically babies at this point. Very, very shortly after that first hospital visit, they began dating, and y'all, their relationship moved so fast. Like, we're talking warp speed here. So they very, very quickly got hot and heavy. You do what adults do when they're in a relationship. And before she knew it, she was pregnant. And this is when their relationship, they just never took a second to stop. They never took a second to slow down. It was kind of like full speed ahead from the very moment they got together. So Heath ends up taking Michelle back to Australia. He ends up taking her to his home, and their first date basically is a day spent on Bondi Beach. They're on the beach and they're enjoying the sun and the sand, and they're just relaxing and kicking back. And he had a very tumultuous relationship with the tabloids, specifically the Australian tabloids. He really just didn't want anything to do with him. While Heath enjoyed being an actor and he enjoyed the benefits that came with it, he was not a fan of the paparazzi at all. Had a little bit of a low-key kind of war going on with them, and he would kind of hide from them and things like that, and they just basically were not nice to each other, and that very much rubbed off on Michelle as well. So there are a couple of pictures of them standing outside, like on the beach or whatever, and they're both kind of flipping the camera off. I think that picture's worth 1,000 words. That pretty much sums it up. They began building their family before they even had a chance to really know what was going on. And honestly, the day before Brokeback Mountain actually released in theaters, Michelle gave birth to their daughter. Michelle gave birth to Matilda Rose on October 28th, 2005. And when it came to parenthood, y'all, they were both completely in the dark. Had really no idea what they were doing. Somehow, though, Heath took to parenthood like a fish to water. He loved being a dad so much. And there is a quote that he said in an interview that I think really resonated with me, and I think very much explains how he felt before he started building this family. He said before his wife and his daughter, he just kind of like wasn't even sure that he really existed. Wasn't sure what his point here was. He basically kind of felt like a ghost. And then along comes Michelle and Matilda, and he feels like he has purpose. He feels like he finally knows why he's here. And Michelle and Matilda became his purpose. They became his absolute everything. And being a father was his greatest joy. They both had a lot to learn about being parents just in general. But they moved from, y'all, they gave it their very, very best shot. They moved from Los Angeles to New York. They got a home in Brooklyn. They got a home in Brooklyn before it was cool to live in Brooklyn. They very much made it like the spot. And y'all, honestly, they were just hipsters trying to figure life out. They're babies at this point. They're very young. They're very much into like that rebel without a cause kind of thing, like that mindset. Heaven forbid they like or enjoy anything mainstream. Heaven forbid that they follow the status quo. So they're trying to kind of, I don't know, forge a path. They're trying to go where no hipster couple has gone before. And they actually did a really fantastic job of it. They moved to Brooklyn, and Michelle immediately tries to become part of the community. She joins a couple of committees, and she's really just trying to be a staple and be somebody that their daughter can like look up to, right? And very often people would see Heath kind of riding down the sidewalk on his skateboard, playing with Matilda, that kind of thing. They were just, I mean, if you didn't know they were famous, you wouldn't know they were famous. They just tried to be as normal as they possibly could. And it was beautiful. It was wonderful for a little while. Throughout Heath's adult life and even, part of his teenage years, he had struggled seriously with substance abuse problems. And I think that this is a story about as old as time itself. So many good, amazing people have just been led totally astray by addiction. And y'all, I know I say it every time I speak about it or every time this subject kind of comes up, but I am, I'm a recovered addict as well. I can so 100% understand how addiction can turn you into somebody completely different. But this is ultimately, like, Heath's addiction problems are ultimately what led to the demise of their perfect little life. So like I said, he had struggled with substance abuse issues throughout his life. And, he was a party boy. He enjoyed going out. He enjoyed being on the town. He enjoyed going to clubs, things like that. And Michelle just wasn't into it. When she had their daughter, Michelle was like, things are going to change. Things now have to be a certain way. Like, we're grown-ups now, we're adults, we have a daughter, and it's time to act like that. And Michelle was putting in all the work. She was doing what she was supposed to do. She was raising their daughter. She was taking care of business. She was taking care of Heath and working at the same time. And then you have Heath, who is he's a great dad, a pretty fantastic partner, but he's going out every night. He's not helping at the house. He's not helping raise Matilda. Like, he's not doing his fair share. And instead of him being home with them, he's out at the bar, he's out drinking. And then all of a sudden, he's got this big Coca-Cola habit. And this is really what pushes Michelle over the edge, because he would tell her time and time again, he'd be like, I'm going to get better. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to stop doing it. And then she, he'd go out the next day and do it all over again. And the straw that broke the camel's back was when she came home one day, and there's Heath, and he's got just a can of Coke sitting right there on the table, and their daughter's in the house. And at this point, she's like, I'm freaking done. I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. You are unwilling to change. You're not going to do it. And I can't continue to wait on you. Now, in Michelle's head, this is just a ploy. This is a tactic to get Heath to realize that he needs to step up, and he needs to be a father. Now, she has no actual intention of leaving this man forever, right? She's like, you need to fix yourself. I love you so much, and I want to be, I want to be with you. I want you to be a father to our daughter, but I need you to man up. I need you to grow up a little bit, and I need you to stop doing this. And in her mind, the only way to get him to do that was leave. Take away what he loves most so that he realizes what's important, right? Because a lot of times men don't miss, he's not going to miss it until it's gone, right? So she packs her things, she packs their daughter, and their daughter is about 2 years old at this point. So she's given it 2 years. She's given this man 2 years to step it up, to straighten up and fly right, and he's just refusing to do so. So she's got to. Like, Matilda is getting to a point now where his partying and his, coming home drunk at all hours it's starting to affect their daughter. And Michelle really feels like she doesn't have a choice. This is what she has to do. So she packs her things and she leaves. Heath is understandably freaking devastated. Unfortunately, Heath would never get the chance to clean up his act. He spiraled a little bit after Michelle left. And I don't think it's Michelle's fault, because he was on his way toward a spiral even while she was there. But I think when she left and he no longer had somebody keeping him semi under control, he was left to his own devices, and he just went overboard. Also, I found out that he was struggling with insomnia really, really badly. And insomnia was a problem that he had struggled with throughout his entire life. He had a very, very overactive mind. His body would be exhausted, but his brain just wouldn't shut off, which led him to start experimenting with sleeping medications. And after that, he would start mixing them with things that he shouldn't have mixed them with, and it became a serious problem. And while he was filming the Dark Knight, and he had to get into that headspace of the Joker, it put him in a very, very dark place. So add that dark place to the addiction issues, to the insomnia, and it was very much a recipe for complete and utter disaster. Now, during this separation period, after Michelle had left, she was still speaking to Heath on a regular basis. Heath was still speaking to his daughter, things like that. However, he was away filming for The Dark Knight, and again, he was just spiraling a little bit. So he's at home, and he's just exhausted, and he needs to get some sleep. So he, very unfortunately, ends up making himself a medical cocktail, and this cocktail proves to be fatal. He mixed pain medication with nerve medication, and it ended up basically stopping his heart. It stopped his breathing, and he went to sleep, and he never woke up again. So Heath was, oh my God, it's so heartbreaking. He was discovered by his, I think it was his masseuse and his housekeeper. The next day, he had made an appointment with his masseuse for a massage, and she and the housekeeper came into the house, and Heath was unresponsive. And so it was a big kerfuffle, because I believe that they called Ashley Olsen, or Mary Kate Olsen, one of the two, one of the Olsen sisters, because I believe she might have, people thought that she owned the house that Heath was living in, or staying in. It wasn't the case. People also assumed that she was the one that provided him the medication, which proved to not be true either. She was investigated for that and was found not to be at fault, but it was a big kerfuffle. So they call her, and then they end up calling the ambulance. Now, unfortunately, Heath never had there was never a chance to save him. He was already well and truly gone by the time that he had been discovered that next morning. But again, it was so heartbreaking. And of course, then they have to call and they have to notify Michelle and her daughter, Matilda, and they have to notify his family. And it was a big deal. And on top of that, like, people knew that Heath was staying there. So when the ambulances and the police start to show up, people start to get curious. And by the time they removed Heath from his home, there were about 300 people standing on the street, kind of like craning their necks, trying to figure out what had happened. So it was splashed all over the newspapers. It was all over the TVs. It was absolutely everywhere for weeks after, and it was ruled as an accidental unaliving. There was no intention. There was no intent to do that to himself. He mixed the wrong things and was never able to recover from that. And after his passing, then the battle for his estate really began. And this is where his father, Kim, comes back into the picture. At the time of his passing, Heath hadn't had a chance to go and update his will after the birth of his daughter. So when he passed and his will was read, it was discovered that he had left half of his estate to his sisters and the other half to his parents. He had made no provisions for his daughter at all whatsoever. And this was kind of a problem. People were very worried that Kim, Heath's father, was going to kind of step in, try to contest the will, take all of the estate, kind of keep it for himself. Happily, that is not what happened at all. The family came together and decided to take Heath's estate, which was estimated at about $20 million, keep it in its entirety, put it into a trust for when Matilda reaches the age of maturity. And that's exactly what they did. So she definitely has something to look forward to. $20 million is a lot of money, even in today's money. So she's set for the rest of her life. And that's all that Michelle really was worried about. Michelle has a fantastic relationship with Heath's parents, and they are still very involved in Matilda's life, things like that. As for Michelle, she was, obviously devastated when Heath passed. This breakup was never supposed to be a forever kind of thing. And, she was fully intending on her family getting back together at some point. And the fates decided that just wasn't in the cards. To kind of pay tribute to Heath, she wore her hair very, very short for a very, very long time. She said he was the only man she'd ever met that actually liked her hair better short than he did long. And she said keeping it short kind of kept his memory alive for her. And, if it helps, it helps. And she does wear it a little bit longer nowadays, but she still keeps it rather short. I don't think Heath is ever too far away from her thoughts. I do think that he was her first true love, and I think it's absolutely tragic the way that all played out. I know that he's definitely in a better place now. He's not having to deal with all of those worries and all of that weight that he carried around on his shoulders. And I just think this story is so sad. I do wish it had a happier ending. Guys, that is it for today's True Love Tuesday. I really did enjoy today's story, even as sad as it was. This is today's finished look. What do we think? Do we like it? Do we love it? Let me know in the comments below. Guys, as always, I love you so very much. No filters, no fancy lighting. It is just me sitting in front of my camera, telling you guys an epic love story, hoping you guys are enjoying what I'm doing. If you did enjoy today's video, please don't forget to give it a big old thumbs up before you leave. And until next time, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and remember, you're important. Bye.